present. And then one thing we're trying to do is maybe be a bit more visual on social media. So if you could check out some of our social media feeds, and we're going to try to do some different contests, share our newsletters kind of through that method as well. So kind of keep your eye posted for that. Continuing on, just wondering if there's any additions to the agenda at this time that maybe someone would like to share. Hopefully you can see the agenda there. It's on the screen share. Just maybe give people a few minutes to look at that, or maybe raise their hand if there's something they wanted to suggest, add, or change. All right. If there's no other additions or mentions for the agenda for today, just to keep things rolling along, I know everybody has busy schedules. I know some people have to be somewhere else even as well. We do have the pleasure, I have two guest speakers that are going to share some of their great wealth and knowledge today. Last year, I did have the privilege of teaching grade 6, 7, 8 health, and definitely realized the need and concern for the teenage vaping and the nicotine epidemic that continues. So I just wanted to have our two guests. I've got Dr. Laura Struick with us today, Dr. Kendra Nelson Ferguson as well, and they're going to share some of their research. They're going to highlight some of the concerns and maybe some of the next steps where our public health units need to go. So I just wanted to welcome them, and whoever is going to share first, or if you're sharing together, we're ready to listen to your great presentation.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Laura Struick, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of British Columbia's Okanagan campus, and specifically at the School of Nursing. As Jeff kind of alluded to, I am running a research program that's focused on addressing youth health behaviors and specifically on nicotine product uptake. So naturally, vaping has become a large focus of my research program. And I'm going to present today with my colleague and friend, Dr. Kendra Nelson Ferguson. We're going to present today on some projects that we've worked on and how the success of these projects and any kind of efforts moving forward, whether it's intervention or policy, really needs to have the engagement of youth. So we're going to, even though our focus of our research is on vaping, the focus of this talk today is about the importance of ensuring that there is a participatory infrastructure in place for such efforts to be successful. So we're going to talk about how we created that participatory infrastructure, and then move into speaking a little bit about some projects that have utilized that participatory infrastructure and what it means for moving forward, and some of those implications for individuals such as yourself who are working, many of you are working on the ground with youth within schools. So I am excited to give this presentation, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend the next half hour with or less or more with you. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I am presenting from the unceded territory of the Syilx people. I just wanted to hand it over to Kendra to introduce herself, and I will pull up the presentation while she's doing that. Kendra, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here today. We are super excited to have the invite and just be amongst a team that's trying to make a difference, as are we from a different perspective. So my name is Kendra Nelson Ferguson, and I am a research scientist at Western University. I work very closely with Laura out of UBCO, and we've been doing a lot of vaping research in the last year together on our e-prevention and vaping project. And prior to that, I was the postdoctoral associate on the Teens Talk Vaping project, and I've worked with some of you who are actually here today, so it's really nice to see your names on the screen. So yeah, we're really excited to be here and to share our participatory infrastructures that we've worked on the last little bit.
Okay, so I wanted to start off just with thinking about current health promotion efforts, particularly as it relates to supporting youth to make the decision to not vape. So vaping prevention. I'm sure it's very well known amongst yourselves. I know it's very well known amongst youth that we've talked to throughout our research. Consider the Consequences campaign that is run by Health Canada. This is a multi-million-dollar campaign. And unfortunately, we have not received very positive feedback regarding the efficacy of this campaign and of campaigns that are similar in nature, which is pretty widespread, not only in Canada, but also in the US, where they really focus on health consequences. They lack acknowledging the context in which youth are working at or are living and working in. And a lot of youth have talked about how these posters are often ripped down from the school walls and brought to home, and they make fun of the posters while they vape. So unfortunately, this is an example of a very expensive effort that's really not resonating with youth. So we are spending all this money and they're not really proving to be effective. And I will acknowledge that there isn't any like hard evidence, like a randomized control trial that's been conducted to determine why or why not these messages are or are not effective. So I am speaking from just the anecdotal, not just anecdotally actually, from evidence that we've generated from interviews with youth, but I want to acknowledge that this hasn't been tested through a randomized control trial or anything. So why are they not proving to be effective? We do have historically a long trail of evidence over time that has shown that a lot of health promotion efforts directed towards youth are not successful. And one of the reasons why, and the evidence supports this, is that because a lot of these efforts are driven by adults and primarily by that armchair researcher, where we're not living the context that youth are living in. And so the lack of understanding this context is contributing to a lot of this failure. And the way to address this is by involving youth in our research, in our intervention development, in our programming, in our policy decisions. We really need to engage youth because they know their contexts. I like to think of myself as young, but at the end of the day, they live in a context and in an era where, vaping didn't exist when I was their age and going to high school. So really making sure that you're involving youth who know that context is really important. So what exactly does it mean to involve youth? What does youth-led work mean? So there has been a lot of tokenism historically in research, where youth are brought in kind of like as a symbolic effort to promote research and engagement within the youth community. But at the end of the day, the driving force behind this is pretty individual in nature, kind of selfish in nature. It's to calm the funders. It's to kind of promote your work rather than actually empower youth. So youth-led, it's really important that youth-led work is empowering youth, is lending to youth feeling empowered. So how do we ensure that we are empowering youth and not kind of turning into tokenism or even causing a burden on youth? Because another issue is that if we say youth-led, does that mean we're just putting all the work and giving youth basically a tall order when it comes to addressing a particular issue? So how do we balance this out? And some of the key things that are important for balancing this out include respecting them for what they have to bring to the table and really bringing them on as collaborators. You're bringing in their insights into the work and implementing those insights into the work that you are about to embark on. It's important to also acknowledge that there are inherent power dynamics when it comes to engaging youth, from age differences to educational differences to whether they're being employed or not. So it's really important to acknowledge that. It's also really important to promote active participation, value criticism. When I say criticism, or constructive criticism, and ensure that there's a safe space for youth to share their ideas, whether they conflict with what you might think or what others in the room might think as well. It's really important to create that safe space so that regardless of what they have to voice, that they feel comfortable bringing that out. And that kind of aligns with encouraging all voices to come to the table and making sure you have that space for open discussion. And I'm going to speak to how some of this can happen and provide some more tangible examples as we move forward between Kendra and I. Another important thing is to ensure that there's clear training in place or planned in order to increase their confidence and competence. So ensuring that you support them in how to write an email. It sounds simple, but a lot of youth don't know how, or teens who are coming in do not necessarily know how to construct an email properly, and that might be something that will be a barrier or create some nerve. So giving them examples of how a scholarly email is written, of how a recruitment email might be written, how to do a presentation, how to incorporate citations, how to conduct interviews. All of these are really important pieces depending on what their interests are and what the project needs are. Ensuring that you are a good leader and you have a good team of leaders so that youth can feel comfortable and ask questions. And then most importantly, allowing youth to lead. In my research program, it's really important that they start to build their skills and expand their skills so that they are leading presentations, they are lead authors on presentations, that they are lead authors on publications, that they are lead authors on knowledge translation outputs, that they have opportunity to mentor each other. So really, really important to allow them to lead. They have they have so much to offer, and yeah, my research program would not be at where it's at if I didn't let anyone lead and let them lead. And so, yeah, I will hand it over to Kendra to continue to build on this conversation.
Thanks, Laura. There are various ways and types of youth engagement which come with an array of benefits. However, youth aren't always aware of these opportunities or how they can contribute to personal growth or really enhance the feelings of community belonging and ownership, social development, and provide the opportunity for intergenerational collaboration. So when we look at an example of being involved in a youth advisory council or committee, it's important to explicitly state that honorariums will be provided for their time. They may receive recognition for their contributions, such as potential to co-author a publication. As Laura had mentioned, their involvement can be included on their resumes, which is a major asset for career development and academic achievement. They will likely engage in research and provide guidance on research plans and materials. They'll have the opportunity to participate in events like attending symposiums or workshops, and they're contributing to doing things differently. So going outside that typical box and improving the health and well-being of youth. And when we think about youth involvement, it's more than just a role on a project. It's about capacity building and training future researchers and leaders, relationship building and increased interpersonal skills while interfacing with various partners and demographics, which again can contribute to social belonging, connectedness, and capital, leading to future educational or employment opportunities. It's about confidence building through agency and leadership, where youth really have that voice and are empowered. Also skill development, such as writing, giving presentations, and mentorship, as well as pedagogical implications such as development of knowledge, transferable skills, and critical thought, which all lend to career progression and giving youth that competitive edge.
Thanks. And I just wanted to add that one of the youth co-researchers that have been working with me out of high school is now pursuing a PhD. And she said that working within the lab, starting as a youth co-researcher, had significantly shaped that trajectory that she is now on. So really important to invest in youth when designing projects or programs. So there are different types of youth engagement, and I'm going to name 4 that I have been involved with. So there's the youth co-researcher. So a youth co-researcher could be employed or not employed. As I found out, this is age dependent. So if they are under the age of 15, you can hire them on an honorarium basis. And then, once they're above the age of 16, you can employ them. And they are involved in the day-to-day research activities of a particular project. So they're very heavily involved in making the design and planning decisions and implementing that research. So like running interviews, for example, conducting data analysis. So very much involved in the day-to-day activities. The other role is a youth consultant. This is an honorarium-based position. They are often part of a large project team. Often they come on board when a grant is being written, and they basically are providing feedback and guidance on the behalf of representing a particular target audience. So let's say we're writing a grant where it's on, let's say it's on vaping and or vaping cessation, and we'd like to have the feedback and input of somebody with lived experience. So maybe a youth who currently vapes or has recently quit. And if they show interest in being on the team, they would help us provide guidance on writing that grant, and then ultimately be involved in supporting the project and helping us recruit more youth to bring on board. So that's the youth consultant role. And then there are youth advisory councils. Youth advisory councils are great resources. So sometimes researchers will develop youth advisory councils as part of their research program, but there are also often youth advisory councils that are embedded in potential community partners. So for example, Interior Health here in the Okanagan has a youth advisory council, and they invited me to present my work to the Youth Advisory Council and involve them in providing feedback on project concepts, on project recruitment materials. So these are great resources. I have also engaged Youth Advisory Councils across Canada that have provided input on the work. So often partner organizations can be great resources for this, and youth advisory councils really provide feedback and guidance as a group, as representative of the demographic. And then there's a research assistant. So they are employed. They could be undergraduate or graduate. They often support multiple projects, and they could also be a co-researcher on a particular project as well. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This specific example guides our e-prevention and vaping or EPAV project that Laura is the nominated principal investigator on, and I'm a co-investigator, but also the scientific manager, which we will detail as we progress. But this is one example of how levels of youth engagement in research may look. And as you can see, for objective 1 of the EPAV project, a youth co-researcher's role is to really implement the research plans and activities. So they'll do this by generating content, co-leading our workshops or data collection, co-developing and designing our vaping prevention messages or data analysis. Whereas in contrast, the YAC's role would be to support the project's direction by providing feedback and guidance on research plans and materials. But together, co-researchers and the YAC would really be included in sharing our recruitment strategies, engaging in the end of study workshop or summit, and supporting the delivery of, in our case, our vaping prevention campaign. So both very critical roles in the success of our youth-led project, but just an example of how those roles may differ.
So how do you start and where do you start? As I had mentioned, you really need to have training structures in place. So ensuring that you provide youth with a sequence of tasks that they need to complete before becoming involved. In our case with research, there are ethical certificates that they have to complete. So slowly immersing them into the world of research that gives them some that initial confidence in relation to the world that they are starting to immerse themselves in. It's also really important to match their strengths and interests to tasks. So ask youth what they're interested in. If they are like social media gurus, you could get them to lead the charge on posting social media content for a particular project. If they are excellent writers, they could lead writing literature reviews or summaries. It's also important to ask them about their long-term goals, because that will also shape how you guide them. So if they're looking for looking to attend graduate school, make sure you open up those opportunities for them to really lead some of the writing, some of the presentations that could happen. Because ultimately that enhances their success in receiving early scholarships, and it just kind of sets them on that successful trajectory. Providing them with how-to guides is also really critical, and lab manuals. So and for larger research programs. So yeah, for larger research programs, it's helpful to orient youth to what your lab is all about and who's involved and what are the different projects that are falling under that lab. And just keep in mind that the training needs to lead somewhere. So really think about the value of building the capacity of youth and expanding their skill sets and challenging them as time goes on. And that investment will lend to retention. I can speak from experience that I have had many youth who have come out of high school and are still with me through to their PhD. So that's I think that's a testament to investing in them and ensuring that you are creating a successful trajectory for them. And yes, Kendra.
So some of you may be thinking, how do we recruit youth? It is not an easy task, and recruiting youth for engagement really stems from awareness and knowledge of those opportunities. So we often look to our community partners, like I had said, some of which are in attendance today, but also out in BC and others across the country, to advertise and spread the word. Health units and school boards can reach a large audience of youth, which is very valuable for us. We also rely on online platforms, which are very familiar to youth and easily accessible. Various youth-serving organizations, such as the YMCA, have also always been keen to help post our recruitment flyers online or in their centers. Further, word of mouth really goes a long way. Generally, if we're working with youth or with different youth advisory councils, we can try to engage their friends and their family and try to make them aware of the opportunities, which can help be effective in this case. And lastly, we've been invited to a handful of lectures, for example, at high schools, where we can bring awareness to the benefits of involvement and what involvement may entail or lead to. And this can be super helpful, not only for providing youth with the different opportunities and what's out there and around them, but it's also a great way to engage in conversation with them and to answer any questions that they may have while they're in attendance.
So just briefly, some examples of youth-led research. I ran the Why Vape project, which was a project aimed at understanding the contextual drivers behind youth decision-making around vaping. So we know that social peer influences play a key role, for example, but we really wanted to understand the contextual and intersectional interplay between factors that drive youth vaping. So we ran this study with co-researchers and the input of youth advisory councils, and this lent to building a trusting relationship with the West Bank First Nation here in Kelowna. And so we had two arms of the work. One was Indigenous, one was non-Indigenous, which really surfaced how context is such an important piece when it comes to understanding youth vaping, because a lot of the drivers that underpinned Indigenous decision-making were variable and nuanced compared to non-Indigenous youth and the reasons that were underpinning it. And so things like historical trauma, intergenerational trauma, colonialism, all of these things were actually underpinning Indigenous youth uptake and are important to pay attention to when we're thinking about generating policies, when we're thinking about generating interventions and messages. And so with all of this data, we combined it with the Teens Talk Vaping, which I will let Kendra speak to.
Yeah, so Teens Talk Vaping was a much about developing a youth participatory approach where teens were involved in as much of the research process as possible as it was about generating insight into vaping. So Teens Talk Vaping sought to co-produce research about the experiences and exposures that shape teen vaping with teens to give voices to the individuals it seems to be affecting the most. So we hired members of the HEAL YACS Youth Advisory Council to join the team in paid positions as team co-researchers. And we developed a capacity building program to train them in the qualitative research skills necessary to contribute from conceptualization through to dissemination. And this was a year-long capacity building program. And our teens ran the focus groups, they analyzed the data, they created dissemination products from a publication to a video that we share very widely with our team. But this data, in addition to YVape, has really helped lead us in a direction, not only with the participatory infrastructure that we've all built together, but being able to utilize our resources and youth co-researchers to help steer the direction towards our next research project, which is EPUB.
Yeah, I think I'll skip through this slide and let you or am I speaking to EPUB? I think you are.
You go ahead. It's your baby.
So as we had mentioned before, these two projects have led to a four-year CIHR funded project that's going to unfold over the span of 4 years. We are currently about to enter year 2 of this project. And so basically this project is leveraging this participatory infrastructure that was embedded in the YVape as well as the TTV study. And it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the youth participation, that very strong youth led component to this project. And also it's not only the first tailored prevention intervention that's designed by youth for youth across Canada, but it's actually going to be the first representation of Indigenous-based prevention messaging as well. So we're really excited about this and representing the Syilx people here in the Okanagan. We finished phase 1 of this project, which involved message concept development with youth. So what's really interesting is that the whole workshops that we led, we held 3 in-person workshops, and the youth co-researchers that are on our team really were heavily involved steering the activities that were going to lead youth throughout the day to result in message concepts that we could put forward for development by a graphic designer and videographer. So we've got lots of concepts ready for iteration and development, and we're going to go back to the youth and select one primary message concept for testing across Canada through an RCT. So that's our emergent next step. But at the end of the day, I think what's really important is whether you're conducting research, thinking about putting together a lecture within schools, or thinking about how to better develop school policies around vaping, I think it's really critical that you bring youth on board, because they can speak to what may or may not work within their context, and they have so much intelligence and intel that will really render a successful outcome. So don't brainstorm things alone. Make sure you bring youth on board. I will say that one of the projects that I was working on, I was evaluating, or not evaluating, but interviewing youth who are quitting vaping, and trying to understand how their immediate social environment was impacting their cessation experiences. This is another project that was led by youth co-researchers, and this project really brought forward some really kind of alarming data. One of the biggest things was that youth were choosing to quit solo. So even though they chose to start vaping because of social pressures and the impact of their social environment, their choice to quit was a very independent endeavor. And there are a few reasons for this. They didn't want to be judged, and they really didn't want to put off their friends who continued to vape. Often friends who continued to vape really frowned upon and would distance themselves from youth who were trying to quit. And finally, they talked about how it's just not normalized. They say they said that schools are one of the primary areas in which vaping is normalized. And because quitting is not normalized, we feel like it's taboo to talk about. And they said we need opportunities to talk within our schools. We need opportunities to like form groups within the schools. They need opportunities to give shape to policies. They wanted to have more exposure to messages that normalize the quitting process. But to date, youth just don't have that normalized narrative. So vaping has been normalized, quitting has not been normalized, and that has significant implications for how we should move forward, and for how maybe schools might want to think about moving forward and engaging youth to come up with solutions that help normalize that conversation. Yeah, so I have lots of other project examples. So, but I realized the time, yeah, I think that's it for today. But thank you so much for your time. And Kendra, if you have any last few words, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, I think that's great. Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about our current e-prevention and vaping project, visit our website, or you can follow us on Instagram for some updates. And as Laura said, we do have some teen co-researcher gurus managing our social media page. Thank goodness for that. But it's yeah, some good information is shared on there, so be sure to follow along. But thank you so much for having us today. I did notice that a few questions are coming in to the chat. So I don't know if there is time to address some of those, or if we
Yeah, we got a few seconds. The one I think you kind of covered, it was surrounding about recruitment, trying to entice kids to be part of that. I know you kind of highlighted some of the community partners that are available, even though they might not have some of the incentives that you mentioned. And then the second part of that was just retaining them. But I guess if you have someone kind of signing up, they're probably dedicated to it, and they probably do stick with the program, right? So it's kind of finding those impactful individuals that kind of buy in and stay along. The other thing that was mentioned in the chat, public health units across Ontario are promoting a not an experiment, as far as I've seen some of the work with that as well. And then more into the secondary level, there's a Halt the Haze program. Just wondering if you've maybe heard of these programs at all, or there's something maybe a bit smaller than what you're researching.
Yeah, I haven't. I've heard of not an experiment, but I haven't heard of Halt the Haze. So I'll have to take a look at that. Thanks for sending the links as well. And from what I recall, I believe not an experiment is the youth are involved in that. From what I recall, but I think I better I better check that. But yeah, Kendra, do you know a little bit more about any of these?
Yeah, so I actually had heard first about not an experiment from some of the Healthy School Unit individuals that I work with, and super creative posters. We did show some of them at our previous workshop. So we had some youth look at the posters, see what they liked, they disliked. So we definitely started integrating them and seeing what is kind of drawn from those. But I haven't heard of the Halt the Haze, but I did click on the link, so I'm going to review that. It looks like it's a learning series, which is also interesting to.
You can peek out. Yeah, because I was going to also ask if you, obviously I was assuming you had to be familiar with the STOMP program with Ryan Fahey, and that's actually part of the Not an Experiment program. So that is the one that definitely has the student voices driving the ship for that. So yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great to generate some research on efficacy of these programs as well. I think that's something that's really missing, because there are some great ideas that have been circulating over the last probably 2 years, and unfortunately we just don't have the efficacy data yet. So it'd be great to see something like that evaluated. And then just going back to that first question about incentivizing youth to be involved, I think depending on where and how you're framing it, really emphasizing them to think about their future can also be very beneficial. So telling them that this is a great way to pad your resume and show community involvement, learn a few skills as well in terms of collaborating with your peers, learning about the topic that you are talking about. So I think there are lots of ways to frame it that doesn't necessarily require a financial incentive, although I will say that financial incentives are very helpful. Yvette?
Well, hi. Thanks for taking my question. I wondered if in your work with youth, if you had been able to mobilize them to maybe be more politically active in terms of actually changing the environment and access to these vaping products. Because I have children who are high school teachers, and they say they're manufactured in a way that the students actually to conceal the product, the way it's packaged. And I was listening to you talking about youth advisory committees, but I really wonder what's going on at Health Canada. That do they ever have a youth advisory committee when they're designing these poster campaigns? I guess I'm a bit frustrated that the access to the product is not being addressed aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you're speaking to the choir. I would say, yeah, it's very frustrating when you see these products rolled out with very little evidence of them being harm reduction or serving as any kind of effective as an effective cessation aid. And it's very obvious that they're not targeting adult smokers in their marketing at all. They are 100% marketing their products as a lifestyle product, not a cessation product. They're designed to become embedded within youth cultures, and that is exactly what's happened with vaping. That's exactly what we're seeing happening with nicotine pouches. And once they become embedded in youth cultures, with social media nowadays, it's going to spread like wildfire. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's really difficult to claw it back once it's embedded in their youth cultures. And so one of the biggest things is to understand what are these youth cultures and bring in these cultural elements that are important to them right now in our prevention message designs and interventions and policy efforts. So, I mean, yeah, don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I have heard about intentions to implement vape detectors in schools in Ontario. I don't know if this is all of Ontario, but in lots of parts of Ontario. Just with the uptick of nicotine pouches now, it could be it could be very problematic because nicotine pouches are promoted for their, they're very concealable. Youth are using them while they're counseling kids camps. One of my co-researchers said that she was a youth counselor for a kids camp, and most of her peers had multiple nicotine pouches while they're advising these kids every single day, all day long. And nobody knows because it looks like a piece of gum. You can't smell it. And so it's just going to, policies like that will likely steer youth to concealing more, or to alternatives that enable them to conceal more, like pouches. So just have to be really careful and understand what these cultures are about and what they are like in order to effectively steer our financial resources in the right direction. Sorry, I'm rambling, but yeah.
Well, I just think there's environmental modification is a strategy. It's a public health strategy. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm a bit frustrated that we're not changing the environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree. And I think that's key to changing the cultures around it and changing that normalization.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a bit of research just before I got on the meeting, and it was quite interesting, just some misconceptions even that I had as far as, it is a huge epidemic. My mind-boggling thing for me was, how are these kids getting these products, right? And then, finding out that you can just order stuff online, no problem. And yeah, it's marketed in such a smooth way that the kids have just slid right in there. And watching some of these cigarette companies buy these vaping companies, knowing that that's their next, investment, right? As far as the kids are the ones that are going to continue to do this. So, yeah, it is a tough tough thing that we're gonna have to handle over the next few years. I know we're involved, our group is even involved in a written policy that's gonna be sent to the government regarding vaping. So interesting that we don't have kids involved yet, but that might be something that even over the next years could be very impactful. So just kind of want to wrap things up as far as thanking you for coming. Again, very impactful topic. Obviously, in our schools already, we see grades kids 5, 6 already, having these devices or, buying stuff like that. So definitely want to kind of hit it head on if we can, and appreciate the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for attending, and hopefully we can have you back maybe another time with more knowledge and research.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Great to meet everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Awesome. So just for the next bit, we have Selena jumping on. Selena's from OFIA, OFIA Canada. As far as I think they've expanded, they kind of rebranded themselves in the last little bit. And I'm just going to pass things over to Selena. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the opportunity for OFIA to provide updates. I have a few updates that I'm going to share on behalf of OFIA. I typically provide healthy school certification updates, but we've been behind the scenes with some new resources and planning supports, program registration opportunities, and some upcoming professional learning e-learning modules that I would like to provide some updates on. So let me see if I can share my screen. A few resources, but as I'm talking about them, I'll also show them here. All right. So our first resource that I want to highlight are our new simple lesson plans for culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy in health and physical education. So this resource includes grade-specific comprehensive lesson plans to our culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy in health and physical education resource. In addition to using them directly in classrooms, educators can also reference the lesson plans to familiarize themselves as well with the disability-centered movement principles and how they might be able to manifest inclusive learning planning. Another resource that I'll share, or Jeff, maybe I'll share all these links after the meeting if you could provide an update, or I can also
that's great.
The chat as I'm presenting if folks want to follow along. So the next resource that I wanted to highlight is the disability-centered safety. So this is a new section that is on our Ontario Physical Activity Safety Standards in Education. So this resource is intended to assist educators in establishing and maintaining a physically and emotionally safe curricular and intramural environment for students with disabilities. So this resource is not intended for interschool. There were 3 tools developed to support teachers on this section on the OPAS safety website. So the first one includes the disability safety considerations. So we have 7 disability groupings identified and considerations for each. This aligns with a relatively new resource that OFIA launched last year on ophia.net, the Disability-Centered Movement Supporting Inclusive Physical Education resource. So these considerations, as mentioned, are aligned with the 7 disability groupings, and they're intended to be used alongside the current curricular, intramural, elementary, and secondary safety standards. When you're looking at the activities, when planning, there will be a statement shortly on every single activity page to raise more awareness of this new section. We also have some scenarios. So we heard from educators that they want to be able to know how to implement these considerations. So we have a scenario at the elementary school level, as well as a scenario for the secondary school grades. And then lastly, we have with this resource a sample guiding question checklist. So this is intended to support educators in the planning process by highlighting some of the key safety considerations and questions that they should be asking themselves when planning the activities. And these are all aligned with the different sections, the 7 sections that you will find on the safety standard activity pages. Well, put this also the main landing page to this resource in the chat box. The next update around program registrations. So I know most folks here might be familiar with the Healthy School Certification Program. This program gives schools the opportunity to promote and enhance health and well-being for students, school staff, and the broader school community. Registration opened up in September. You can register now. Registration remains open until November 29th, 2024. There are some new things that I'd like to highlight for the Healthy School Certification Program. These are all mentioned in our recent blog post. So the main thing that I wanted to mention is there is an extra week for reporting. So reporting is now due on the second Friday of May. Typically, it was the first Friday. So hoping that allows some more time for schools to get in their reports, but also encouraging schools to be using their dashboards throughout the entire school year as they move through each of the 4 steps, rather than waiting until the end of the school year. Another thing I wanted to highlight is OFIA. We've collaborated with jack.org secondary chapters. So this is Canada's only charity that trains and empowers young leaders to revolutionize mental health. And this year we're excited to announce this unique partnership. So the presentation we just heard, having engagement, and that's really key for the Healthy School Certification Program. So this is something, if you're a secondary school, to look into, as they are also promoting the Healthy School Certification Program through their chapters program. A new update for this year is the banners have now gone digital. This year, all schools that are certified at any level will receive a digital banner with their certification level that can be displayed on websites and social media. And when we provide the banners in the updates in end of May, schools will also receive a print-ready file that would be provided with the digital banner. So those are the main updates that I wanted to share for new things for Healthy School related. Before I move on to the next registration thing that we have, I did want to mention that OFIA is in an 18-month programmatic review of the certification program. This was initiated last year, and we want to be able to reimagine the program and identify opportunities to increase uptake and success through adaptations and or redevelopment of the program. So the program may look a little bit differently in future years, but for this year, the program has remained the same as the last 2 years. Planning sessions are underway involving provincial and national interest holders to specify the program parameters and to make key decisions on the revised program offering for next year, 2025-2026 school year. But as of right now, everything has remained the same beyond the digital banners and the extra week of reporting. Another opportunity to register, not for Healthy Schools, but Jay's Care Foundation affiliate schools. So this OFIA is connecting Ontario schools to this programming. This program offers 4 different programs. Let me just scroll down here, 4 different affiliate programs. Let's see if we can see that there. So they have their Challenger Baseball, Girls at Bat, Indigenous Rookie League, and RBI, Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities. Each of these programs are targeted to provide schools with support for baseball hardball. And if you register, it is free. You receive specialized and adaptive equipment, resources, and other supports, and schools can select up to 2 out of the 4 programs. And lastly, are some of the professional learning opportunities. So I'll just go on ofia.net under professional learning here. If you scroll down, we have available our disability centered movements supporting inclusive physical education e-learning module. This is a recent one. And then we have our concussion e-learning module, our implementing Ryan's Law e-learning module that have been they're updated annually. And we also have OFIA's gender-based violence prevention education e-learning module that was recently released. These are all free e-learning modules. I did also want to note that we are currently working on developing a new module for 2025-2026, and we're working in partnership with subject matter experts to develop an e-learning module on the policy and program memorandum 161, supporting children and students with prevalent medical conditions. So this will be available in August 2025. I know that was a lot of updates. If we have time, if anyone has any questions, I will share everything that I just shared today, all the links with Jeff and the Ontario Healthy School Coalition team to share back with members.
Just one quick question, Selena. There's an individual explaining that they work with a Jack Talk group. Should they register for the Ontario Healthy Schools certificate through AFIA or through the Jack Talk chapter was the question.
Jack.org, you still need to register through the Healthy Schools website. There will be an option when you register, how did you hear about us? If you could select jack.org, as that's something that type of data that they would like to also collect.
The Jay's Care program that Selena mentioned, I registered for it last year. I ran a Girls at Bat program at my school. It was quite fun. The kids got hats and shirts, which was kind of exciting. Our school got about 14 baseball gloves, really nice ones. We got a bunch of bats, balls, bases, buckets, spot markers, just a whole raft of equipment. That would be great for schools. I just had my training meeting this past Thursday, and we got a top up of equipment. So some more bats, some more gloves, just to help out with running that program. But Jays are looking to do 2,025 schools this year. So if there are schools around that you know that aren't registered, it's just a 2-hour training. It's very inclusive, lots of fun, and something that you should check out. They're really looking for more members to join. So,
and I will mention it is a first come, first serve basis. So once they reach that cap that Jeff mentioned, they won't be welcoming any new schools. So if you are interested, recommend looking into it sooner rather than later.
Any other questions for Selena while she's with us? Awesome. I don't see anything else. Do thank you, Selena, for joining. Hopefully we'll touch base again throughout the year. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye.
Awesome. We're just about at the end of the time for our meeting. If there are any other concerns or questions, we'll just leave a few more minutes for the end. Otherwise, our next meeting is December 5th, 3:30 p.m., our normal start time. We do have tentatively scheduled the 26th and 27th of May for our conference, and just trying to look for a location and sort out some other details for that. So keep that date kind of penciled in. Other than that, Carol, thanks Sophia for some awesome resources. The disability stuff is really great. Andrea Hafley was one of the main pioneers of that material. So if you do need some direction for helping people move in the gymnasium, that's a great spot to check out as well. And agreed, the vaping presentations were great as well. So trying to tackle that problem over the next bunch of years. Don't see any other questions, other hands raised. Probably at this time, I'm going to shortly close the meeting. I do want to thank all of you that attended. I think we had about 50 people in attendance here. So other than that, hopefully everybody has a great rest of their Thursday and enjoys the rest of their day. So thank you very much, and we'll keep in touch.